Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dice Commando YouTube channel. I'm Andrew, with you here as always. This is the Commando Cast, a video cast about all things Star Wars Destiny. This video and others like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. Please show your support with a like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss any new videos. If you want to get involved with the channel, consider becoming a channel member. There are many benefits to channel membership, including access to our Discord, exclusive deck tech and strategy videos, and the opportunity to help create channel content. I want to sincerely thank all our channel members, as I truly couldn't do this without your support. You guys rock. Go Commando. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Commando Cast. It's Monday morning. I treated myself to a fancy pants coffee this morning. I've got an hour in between meetings, and then I'm booked all day, so let's do this. Now, last Friday, I released a video talking about the backwards application of new mechanics in Destiny, and why I think we should be questioning the mindset of perpetual negative balance of the Force. After reading many of the comments, having a really great discussion with some people on the ARH Discord specifically, and also on the DC Team Discord, and going back, of course, and watching the videos several times over, it's clear that I kind of missed the mark in explaining my point of view fully. So in today's video, what I'm doing is I'm seeking to clarify my position and my opinions on the negative balance of the Force as a tool for Star Wars Destiny. Now, I want to be clear here, this is not a retraction. I stand by everything that I said in the previous video. However, my job as a presenter is to clearly and successfully communicate my thesis statement and to make the viewer, you guys, understand, right? And that is where I think that on Friday's video, I missed the mark. I failed. So, you guys may understand one of the challenges of presenting in this format, which is where I'm alone in my office talking to a computer screen and I don't have anybody, to go back and forth with, is that there's no back and forth, there's no reading the room. In cases where, like on Friday's video, there are a lot of underlying assumptions or a lot of stuff that isn't said or whatever you want to call it, stuff that may or may not be understood. If I fail to properly specify those or clarify them, then my mission statement really fails. And that's why you may notice in a lot of my videos, I'll kind of stop mid-sentence and clarify something or change the wording. I'm sure that's annoying from time to time, but what I'm trying to do is really be outside myself and listen to myself as I talk and consider from a third-party standpoint really how to say it better. And in Friday's video, I was really unsuccessful in doing that, and the result was that I wasn't able to convey my message properly. Another result was that, individuals, which was it's the natural thing to do if you don't understand fully the reasoning behind the point, individuals honed in on one part, which in turn means that a large portion of the thesis statement gets lost. So today I want to discuss and further explore this conversation and my position. Now, without question, I support the fundamental concept of negative balance of the Force. I do. I think that it's done a lot of good for this game in accomplishing short-term goals, boosting interest, making someone relevant, making someone fun, whatever it may be. However, I think that its implementation and its presence in the game as a whole has in many cases been very damaging from a longer-term perspective, primarily in that negative balance of the Force has not only made us more accepting of power creep, but in some cases has actually encouraged it. Hey folks, so thanks for tuning in again and for really giving me kind of a second shot at really explaining, what I mean by this, really my position of it. And I for those of you who are out there who were bothered by certain, statements or whatever in the last video, I do understand. I acknowledge why it would have been very easy to walk away from the last video saying, man, if I want, Leia balanced, Andrew thinks I'm dumb. And that's not the case. I actually, again, I'm not against the concept, the ideal concept, I should say, of negative balance of the Force. I think and I believe that if a character was legitimately designed as being overcosted, then we should adjust it, just in the same way that I'm 100% on board on doing positive increases on someone like a Benthic or whatever who was designed and was undercosted, right? I think it goes both ways from a design point. But what I'm against, fundamentally what I'm against is negative balance of the Force kind of as a perpetual in perpetuity type thing. So what I want to do here actually is I'm going to be flashing up some of the comments that I made on the Discord. That's not just so I can read them and have them to reference. This is the ARH Discord specifically, but it's also so that basically I can back up. These comments were all made Friday, and I want to be transparent there and show that I'm not changing my argument. Right? This is what I said Friday, and this is it's what I believe. So my main argument against balance of the Force in general isn't balance of the Force itself, right? In the ideal case, right, the example I use here, right, in the ideal case, like let's say a character was designed like K2SO, for example, right? Maybe K2SO should have been 13.5 points, and they erred on the side of making him, and this is just an example, right? But they made, K2SO was 13.5 points, should have been 13.5 points, and they made him 14. And obviously that didn't work. His abilities, whatever, didn't work out. So making him a 10-13 as opposed to an 11-14, that's ideally, right? That's the ideal case of how balance of the Force should work. That's what I believe its real purpose is. However, from a practical standpoint, I think that what the presence of balance of the Force over the course and over the history of the game has done is it's made people less reactive to characters that are undercosted, right? Meaning your 15s that should be a 17 or about your benthics in this case, right? As a general community, what I've observed, right, this is just my observation, but as a general community, I've observed that we tend to be more desiring to add negatives than we are positives, right? And what this means is when a new character comes in, we say, okay, this is our new baseline. Look at all these characters that can't hold a candle to it. We should decrease the point costs on those characters. And I'm fundamentally challenging whether that's the right mindset. So, what I'm putting up right now in the classic case, and it's funny because we actually had this conversation, I think, like Tuesday last week. So I had already shot Friday's video, and then we actually had a conversation about Phasma versus Hondo, Redemption Hondo. We had that conversation in the DC Discord, I think Wednesday, Thursday last week, kind of leading into it. And I was just kind of sitting back chuckling, right? It's like, oh man, this is coming out. But anyway, the point is, if you compare Phasma, right, Convergence Phasma, Big Phasma, with Hondo, it's very clear that Phasma can't hold a candle to Hondo, right? Now, there are two ways to really compare those. You can say, wow, look how broken Hondo is. Or you can say, wow, look how bad Phasma is, right? And, in that conversation on the DC Team Discord, it was, Phasma should really be dropped a point or two. And I'm fundamentally challenging whether that's the right mindset. Now, I know they're out there. I know, I've had conversations with some of the Destiny Junior folks, and they're like, well, but Phasma was never good. And fine. I mean, she was never driving the meta at the time. But I do challenge that people like Phasma were essentially the gatekeeper. I mean, Phasma was a gatekeeper aggro for several sets, right? I mean, and basically until droids became like really developed, right, in terms of aggro. But Phasma's presence, whether she was directly in the top tier or not, still dictated a lot of approaches to how the meta evolved. And that's what I'm saying is by going back now and saying, okay, this used to be our old gatekeeper, and now our old gatekeeper needs to be 17 points less. Or excuse me, it's 2 points less than 17 or whatever it may be, right? Sorry, I'm doing my math wrong. She would be 19 in that case, right? 21. But my point here is, should we really be going back and saying this was our old standard and our old standard's not good enough anymore, so let's drop it? Or should we be asking, why is Hondo designed the way he is? And that's what I'm really saying is what we're doing by this is we're not directly promoting power creep, but we're embracing power creep by doing that. We should be going out and saying, why is this guy 2 health more? Why is this guy less points and 2 health more and basically has a better ability? Like, that's what we should be asking. We shouldn't say, wow, look at this old character, let's make them better. That's my assertion. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're letting people off the hook when they just creep like crazy, right? And, we've talked at length before on this channel. For those of you who watch regularly, we've talked at length about the difference between short-term and long-term goals in Star Wars Destiny. The short-term goal would be to look at Phasma and say, yeah, I can't play my Phasma today. Let's drop her so I can play my Phasma today, right? That's the short-term goal, which is fixing it and making it exciting in the moment.
The long-term goal here is to say, look what we're doing with the game. Where are we going to be in 4 sets, right? If we continue to drop Phasma every 2 points every couple sets, can you imagine where we're going to be if a Captain Phasma is a 15? Right? And that's more where I see the long term of this is, instead of saying, well, let's just bring everybody up to the new power level, we should really be questioning the new power level in general. And I want to be very clear here. I'm not firing shots at designers. I'm not saying, man, the designers need to stop creep. Well, I do think they need to slow down creep. I mean, I've been very public about that, right? But this isn't a shot across the bow about people are ruining the game because I can't play my Awakenings characters. That's not what this is. Things have to change. Things have to evolve. We all accept that. I mean, again, I think I've gone on record in plenty of my videos talking about that. But again, like I said, or like I'm trying to say, right, by embracing that new power level and trying to decrease the rest of the game to fit around it, I don't think that we're doing ourselves in the long run of this game the justice that we deserve. And I justify this self as well with this comment that I had to some people in the ARH Discord, which was, power creep itself isn't necessarily the target of my attack, right? Again, I accept that power creep is going to happen, change is going to happen, things need to evolve. But rather it's this assumption that because creep happens, we need to adjust backwards. That's really the challenge here. And you know, I want to call out specifically like Bearcat. We had a great conversation on the ARH Discord, and one of the things he mentioned how we needed to set new paradigms every now and then, so that, like, for example, I believe the example he used was that right now we're in a middle because we're tired of all of these massive, support spam hitting. And he's exactly right. I mean, what Redemption has done, without a doubt, is reinvigorated from a character standpoint, from a character standpoint, they've reinvigorated fundamental middle Destiny, without or big little or whatever. Like, they've done a fantastic job with that. No question about it. But if we take that and we go back and we look at the long-term history of Destiny, right? Fundamentally, in Awakenings Destiny at its whole, if you look at Awakenings, was really like a big little, right? Like a 2-die and a 1-die. And that's even on the middle, right? Because most of your characters were 16-14 or 17-13 or something like that, right? Where you couldn't necessarily play the second one elite. Han and Leia, Luke, Ray, whatever it may have been, right? You get my point. And what came out of that was, hey, if you run Phasma wide, you can get a 4-die start that's pretty good with a lot more health. And one of the other complaints coming out of Awakenings was, man, supports are no good. Supports are worthless. So then we had a paradigm shift in Legacies where we not only saw the resource curve go up, but we saw supports become more relevant. And that led us to where we are now. And now we're shifting the paradigm back to go back to middle Destiny, right? And so you see it's this cycle. So we started with supports being bad. Over time, we shifted to where supports were good, which was a power creep in of its own right. And now we're shifting back to make supports not relevant, which is power creeping again, right? So again, we get into this iterative problem of we keep going over and over and over and over and over and over. And at some point, you're just creeping everything out. So now is the expectation that you have to continue to drop to bring the old stuff up, right? It's one of those counter arguments where, well, the reason we're changing things is to change the paradigm. Okay, yeah, that's fine. We want to change and evolve the game or go back to this and have this be the new thing. Perfectly fine. But to do that and then assume that you have to back everything up to be equivalent with it, you see the logical fallacy, and I don't mean Bearcat's logical fallacy. I mean the logical fallacy of negative balance of the Force as applied to this argument. I'm not specifically talking about Bearcat's analogy, right? What his argument did was very good. It outlined how things needed to change over time and how the way to change it over time was basically creep. And he was 100% correct. And now what I'm doing is I'm applying the logic of negative balance of the Force to that argument. And I think you can start to see how it starts to fall apart, right? If the reason we're creeping things is to change the paradigm, but then we bring everything up to be equal with it, we haven't actually accomplished anything, right? All in all. So that's why I say that doing that in of itself if we go by the logic that when something changes, we need to bring everything up to that new level, it continues to feed the need to create for those paradigm shifts. That's really what I'm trying to say here, and I hope I've been successful in really outlining that. Again, and in this last comment, I was really acknowledging the great conversation that we had with a couple of them. Most of the people were respectful, and again, good conversations there. And we talked about this actually in the latest Infinite Holocron update, where I came out and I said, look, I want to lock in the character points, because we can't just keep reducing points over and over and over and over again. And the example I used then, the example I use in this comment, is that are we eventually going to end up with a 2-point First Order Stormtrooper? Now, of course, we're all like, well, of course not, that'd be dumb, right? And of course I'm being hyperbolic. But it's really not that the logic still holds, right? That if every time power goes up, we have to drop everybody more, right? Like, for example, in the last drop, we dropped, Zeb to 14, K2SO went to 10, 13, and so on, right? Well, 4 sets down the line, do we now need to go back from an infinite perspective and make K2SO 11 points? Which means that Leia needs to go, you see what I'm saying, right? It's this iterative process, and eventually, like, what's the right call? And in this comment I say, what's the right call? Do we balance them twice, and then after twice they're done? Or is there a minimum point level? But then doesn't that mean everybody ends up being 7 or 6 points? And it's just a hard thing to limit and check. And I think that from a long-term perspective, the better argument for the game isn't to continue to drop things to make them relevant. The better argument for the game is to do whatever we can using our existing pool to keep the new stuff in check. I think that's the better approach for the long-term health of the game. But again, in the short term, I think Redemption is a perfect example of short-term Destiny, right? Redemption is a amazingly designed set. Like the level of play. I've had the control. That was a couple weeks ago. We had the control discussion, where we're at right now is very control heavy, and it's not necessarily the type of Destiny that I like to play, but I still appreciate and can look at Redemption and say, wow, this was really well done. Like, this set plays really well with itself. And again, the set in a vacuum, I think, is nothing short of, with a few exceptions, I think the set's nothing short of a masterpiece. I think Elrathian and his crew really did a good job with that set. But from a long-term perspective, I wonder what the impacts, and I'm not the only one that said this, right? From the long-term impact, from the long-term impact to Destiny, I'm wondering what Redemption's going to do. And if that sets the new power bar and we maintain it, I think it's going to be perfectly fine from a standard standpoint. I think Infinite's got some challenges. But from a standard standpoint, I don't think it's going to be a problem. But the question is if that, like Bearcat's argument said, that we need to keep shifting to maintain those new paradigms, if that's the expectation, where are we going to be in another 3 to 4 sets, right? So do I hate, we've gone round and around, and I know there's a lot of passion about this, and do I think that because you want Leia to be dropped a point so that you can play her, do I think you're a bad person? No. That was not the end. I do acknowledge that could have been taken, in fringe cases, that could have been taken from my last video, and that's not the case, right? I don't think that you're a bad person, or I don't think that you're not seeing the bigger picture if you want your character dropped one to be able to play them. But what I think is that from a macro point of view, right, the overall arcing state of the game thing, I think that our over-willingness, our over-excitement, I don't know what the right word is, right? But our embracing and the way that we're currently using negative balance of the Force, the way that we're currently using negative balance of the Force, I think is overall a negative for the long-term health of this game. Now, again, if a card is released and the designers just say, you know what, our bad, it should have been a point, like FN2199, I'd love to see him at 12 points. Like from Faltering Legacies, I'd love to see him at 12 points. I don't know what that would do to the game, right? That's something that I would personally like to see. I think he was designed too high, right? Again, that's something I personally want to see, but that's for the short-term gain of me wanting to play that deck, right? In the long term, I think that us just dropping everything down because Hondo, I think dropping Phasma because Hondo is out, I think sets a really bad precedent. So anyway, I know I haven't even been drinking my coffee. See, anyway, so I hope, what I truly hope is that this clarification video has really, I should say this video has really clarified my position, made it more clear what I was trying to say. It's not that negative balance of the Force in specific examples is a bad thing, right? Going back and fixing a character that's undercosted or bringing them up to a power level in of itself is not a problem. I think that the fundamental existence of balance of the Force and the way that we're applying it makes us immune, well, maybe not immune, but makes us numb to many cases of power creep. And I think that that's setting a really bad precedent for us going forward. So anyway, I think we've said enough today. Hopefully you understand where I am. Thank you for giving me a second shot at this. Happy Monday, folks. Enjoy your week, and go Commando.